Kol hashamayim hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Brilliant, Gary, again. Oh my goodness. I think I'm going to have to put a little bass guitar over that when we put it on YouTube. I love it.
Yeah, there you
I
go. There
love
you go.
it.
Oh, you're too kind.
So I'm so glad you all came tonight because tonight's Torah portion is not for the weak of heart. So anyone with weak constitutions, you can leave the Zoom right now.
In this portion,
Woo.
out of the 613 commandments, 74 of them are in this pasha.
Is that right?
Yep.
74? Yeah, this is a
Yep.
tough one. This is tough. And we always say, we always struggle with this part because it's like we're not taking this literally, but we are saying these are guidelines. Well, we all have our own ideas about it. And what I'd like to point out, and I was thinking about this the other day, is that there's laws and then there's punishment, right? So there's laws and you try to do the laws, and if you don't do the laws, somehow you get punished. And so the punishments were pretty harsh around this time when Moses and the Israelites were in the desert and ready to go into the promised land. So just think about the laws first, and then the punishments you can kind of maybe put them aside for a little bit, because it's still good to try to get to the law and to say, well, we can try to do it, even though it can be kind of tricky in our modern age to stay with it. Gary,
Yeah, but see, in my
Yeah, go for
opinion,
it. Go for it, yeah.
I like, to me, it's like the truths that are expressed in the Torah, are those that are unchanging. Like, no matter what perceptions change and interpretations, but I think that, and who knows exactly, but I'm saying whatever was meant when it was written is supposed, like, certain truths in there that are universal throughout time.
Right. Right.
Um,
And they're the
and some,
ideals. They're the ideals that we should try for,
exactly.
It's like, if as long as we're trying, even if we don't quite get there, because there's some things here about the marriages and stuff. I know it's going to be a tricky thing to talk through this, but hey, we're all here to just interpret on our own. Everyone can interpret as how they wish, and
we're not perfect, so God doesn't
know.
expect perfection. God expects you to be wholehearted, as we talked about last week.
That's right. Yeah, that you point that out last week. So with that being said, Cynthia, I know you want to read the first go, because it's going to get worse. Whatever we start with, it's going to be a long. We're going to go deep down, but it's okay. We're going to get through it.
When you, an Israelite warrior, take the field against your enemies, and the Eternal your God delivers them unto you into your power, and you take some of them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her and will take her to wife, you shall bring her into your house, and you shall trim her hair, pare her nails, and discard her captive's garb. She shall spend a month's time in your house, lamenting her father and mother. After that, you may come to her and thus become her husband, and she shall be your wife. Then, should you no longer want her, you must release her outright. You must not sell her for money, since you had your will of her. You must not enslave her. If a householder has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the unloved one. When he wills his property to his sons, he may not treat as firstborn the son of the loved one in disregard of the son of the unloved one, who is older. Instead, he must accept the firstborn, the son of the unloved one, and allot to him a double portion of all he possesses, since he is the first fruit of his vigor, the birthright is his due. If a householder has a wayward and defiant son, who does not heed his father or mother, and does not obey them, even after they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his town at the public place of his community. They shall say to the elders of his town, this son of ours is disloyal and defiant. He does not heed us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Thereupon his town's council shall stone him to death. Here we go again. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst. All Israel will hear and be afraid. If a party is guilty of a capital offense and is put to death, and you impale the body on a stake, you must not let the corpse remain on the stake overnight, but must bury it the same day. For an impaled body is an affront to God. You shall not defile the land that the eternal your God is giving you to possess.
Okay, can we stop there for 1 second? Because I do want to point out, this is pretty harsh. You shall stone him to death. I mean, and granted, some of us have sons who might have been disloyal or defiant at one point in their lives. I'm not saying they're totally defiant always, but
Or we may have been defiant sons.
Oh, hallelujah. Thank you, Gary. That is absolutely true. So our parents might have felt this way about us. But I want to show you something that's really so amazing, is that it's this part at the end. It says, you'll sweep out evil from your midst. All Israel will hear and be afraid. So the idea here is, hopefully, maybe, they might have only had to do it once in a generation or so. So that it's like, we mean business, boom, it's over. And then it's like everyone's kind of fearful, like, oh my gosh, I should toe the line kind of a thing. So that's just one way to look at it. I'm sure there are many others that people might have an opinion about.
I think it's more of a deterrent. I don't think like anybody ever. I think part of it is it's supposed to be, and even like Rabbi Kudan pointed out too. There's no record of which mitzvot like were more followed or which were, or, a record of the percentage of people adhering to certain things. Not that that's not the aspiration, so to speak.
Right.
But I think it's like really largely a deterrent. Like, you're supposed to, if you learn these words and study them from the time you're young, like growing up, you're supposed to know that, and then it's just part of you.
Perfect.
In my humble opinion.
It's a great opinion. I love it. Anybody else have any words before we move on? Does anyone do you want to pick it up at 22? Anyone? Dr. Mike?
If you see your fellow Israelites' ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. You must take it back to your peer. If your fellow Israelite does not live near you, or you do not know who the owner is, you shall bring it home, and it shall remain with you until your peer claims it. Then you shall give it back. You shall do the same with that person's ass. You shall not do the same with that person's garment. And so too shall you do with anything that your fellow Israelite loses, and you find. You must not remain indifferent. If you see your fellow's Israelite axe or ox fallen on the road, do not ignore it. It must be raised. You must raise it together.
Nice.
Okay. A woman must not put on a man's apparel, nor shall a man wear woman's clothing. For whoever does these things is abhorrent to the eternal your God. If along the road you chance upon a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground, with fledglings or eggs, and the mother sitting over the fledgling or on the eggs, do not take the mother together with her young. Let the mother go and take only the young, in order that you may fare well and have a long life.
Could I comment on something?
Sure.
Really quick. That verse right there is really, really significant, because a lot of commentators consider it kind of like the least important of the commandments, because if you look at it, do not take the mother with the eggs. You can do that without really having to do much of anything, because as you're even approaching the nest, for example, the mother would probably get scared and fly away, possibly, or if you made a little noise. And yet, just for doing that little thing, it says that you may fare well and live a long life. The other commandment in the Torah where we're told that is honor thy father and thy mother.
Yeah.
Now you look at the difference between those two commandments, and you look at what, honoring your father and mother involves a lot more than just running up to a nest and scaring the mother off. That's a mitzvah, right? But the reward that you're supposed to get for doing each of these mitzvahs is equal. So what does that tell you? It just teaches you the significance of the smallest little things that you do. And the fact that those mitzvot are just as important, or considered important, performing those very, very simple mitzvot are considered just as important as performing a lot of the big ones.
Yeah. Gary, I think that we should point out that Maimonides called all of these rules, regulations, statutes as commandments.
It's really great that if you think about how like when Gary was talking about how all these are kind of like just as important as the next, and it's really like, help each other out. If someone loses their donkey, give it to them. If somebody see a garment, don't take it. Find out who lost it. All these are really nice. These are very pretty. And then, does anyone want to pick up at 8 when you build a house? I'll just point this out too, because I had to look at this. Yeah, when you build a new house, you should make a parapet for your roof so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house if anyone should fall from it. So a parapet, I had to look this up. It's a small wall that you put at the edge of the roof, so when people are on the roof, they don't fall over. So it was important in the last Torah study we did too. Like if you come across a dead body, it's like there's a blood guilt. You see this over and over. There's something happened, no one knows why, but somebody died, and it has to be. You have to kind of help that. You have to make sure the life is preserved. There you go. So does anyone pick up at number 9? Number 9, Annie.
You shall not sow your vineyard with a second kind of seed, else the crop from the seed you have sown and the yield of the vineyard may not be used. You shall not plow with an ox or an ass together. You shall not wear cloth combining wool and linen. You shall make tassels on the 4 corners of the garment with which you cover yourself. A householder marries a woman and cohabits with her. Then he takes an aversion to her and makes up charges against her and defames her, saying, "This is the party I married, but when I approached her, I found she was not a virgin." In such case, the girl's father and mother shall produce the evidence of the girl's virginity before the elders of the town at the gate. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, "To this party I gave my own daughter to wife, but he has taken an aversion to her. So he has made up charges, saying, I did not find your daughter a virgin. But here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity." And they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of that town shall then take that party and flog him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give it to the girl's father, for that householder has defamed a virgin in Israel. Moreover, she shall remain his wife. He shall never have the right to divorce her.
Mm-hmm. And does anyone know this custom? It's about it's kind of a Middle Eastern thing that some groups still use. Has anyone heard of this? Where you put a sheet under the on the mattress. I don't want to get into it if Lauren knows.
The Orthodox still do it.
They do. Oh wow.
Absolutely do.
So, do you want me to discuss it or not? We could pass if you don't want to know about it.
No. We're here to learn.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I saw a movie about this as well, and so it's a sheet that goes underneath the wedding couple as they make their first make love for the first time, and then if supposedly the woman is a virgin, she's going to bleed on the sheet. The family takes the sheet as evidence that she's a virgin. Right. So there's several things about this that some people don't like it at all. Other people have said there's ways around this where the man can cut himself and bleed on the sheet, and so that he gives everyone a pass or whatever, or however, there's other ways to do this. But anyway, it's It's in the Torah, and we're learning about it. We're talking
I
about it.
think, I
It's
think
a
they
very
call it Bedekin, right? Is that Bedekin? Gary,
Not
the Hebrew,
sure.
I think they call it a Bedekin, and it is still performed in the Orthodox community, which is kind of crazy for our times, but this is what the Torah says. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's
So, one of the things, though, I'd like to mention of going back a little bit, I think if the husband is found is the elders find him agree with him. Interestingly enough, the woman is stoned to death, but if they prove the husband wrong, he's just punished. So there's also, things in here about there's a huge variance between how women and men are treated.
all right. We can always go back to this, but we should soldier on, as they say.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to read? Berta?
But if the charge proves true, the girl was found not to have been a virgin, then the girl shall be brought out to the entrance of her father's house, and her town's council shall stone her to death, for she did a shameful thing in Israel, committing fornication while under her father's authority. Thus she will sweep away evil from your midst. If a man is found lying with another man's wife, both of them, the man and the woman with whom he lay, shall die. Thus she will sweep away evil from Israel. In the case of a virgin who is engaged to a man, if a man comes upon her in town and lies with her, you shall take the two of them out to the gate of that town and stone them to sweep away evil from your midst. But if the man comes upon the engaged girl in the open country and the man lies with her by force, only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the girl. The girl did not incur the death penalty. For this case, it's like that of one party attacking and murdering another. He came upon her in the open. Though the engaged girl cried for help, there was no one to save her. If a man comes upon a virgin who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are discovered, the party who lay with her shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. Because he has violated her, he can never have the right to divorce her. No householder shall marry his father's former wife so as to remove his father's garment. No man whose testes are crushed or whose member is cut off shall be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal. No one misbegotten shall be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal. Where are we? No descendant of such, even in the 10th generation, shall be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal. No Ammonite or Moabite shall be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal. No descendants of such, even in the 10th generation, shall ever be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal, because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey after you left Egypt, and because they hired Balaam, son of
Beor.
The Eternal your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, for the Eternal your God loves you. You shall never concern yourself with her welfare or benefit as long as you live. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for such is your kin. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, for you are a stranger in that land. Children born to them may be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal in the 3rd generation. When you men go out as a troop against your enemies, be on your guard against anything untoward. If anyone among you has been rendered impure by a nocturnal emission, he must leave the camp, and he must not re-enter the camp. Toward evening he shall bathe in water, and at sundown he may re-enter the camp. Further, there shall be an area for for you outside the camp. Where are you? Further, there shall be an area for you outside the camp where you may relieve yourself. With your gear, you shall have a spike, and when you have squatted, you shall dig a hole with it and cover up your excrement. Since the Eternal your God moves about in your camp to protect you and to deliver your enemies to you, let your camp be holy. Let God not find anything unseemly among you and turn away from you. You shall not turn over to the master a slave who seeks refuge with you from that master. Such individuals shall live with you in any place they may choose among the settlements in your midst. Wherever they please, you must not ill-treat them.
Yes. Thank you, Berta. So it's like we have basic hygiene in the camp and a lot of other commands. Anyone want to pick it up, Annie? There you go.
No Israelite woman shall be a prostitute, nor shall any Israelite man be a prostitute. You shall not bring the fee of a whore to the pay of a dog into the house of the Eternal your God in fulfillment of any vow, for both are abhorrent to the Eternal your God. You shall not deduct interest from loans to your fellow Israelites, whether in money or food or anything else that can be deducted as interest. But you may deduct interest from loans to foreigners. Do not deduct interest from loans to your fellow Israelites, so that the Eternal your God may bless you in all your undertakings in the land that you were about to enter and possess.
Okay, we need to stop it in here because this is an important thing. Okay. You may remember that in the Middle Ages, the money lenders were always Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And the Christians, if they gave you money as a loan, they couldn't charge you interest. So Christians didn't do it to anybody. We were the money lenders. And the reason for that is right over here. Okay, so you may deduct interest from loans to foreigners. So we were allowed to loan money with interest, whereas the Christians were prohibited from doing it. This is an important thing that has tremendous historical importance.
Interesting point.
So also, a little different thing about the Hebrew. Okay, we talk about the deducting of interest.
Yeah.
So neshef, the word neshef, nun shin chaf, is related to the word bite. The interest being seen as taking a bite out of the capital, and so. Yeah, so kind of like I know that we probably all may heard a little slang of the cat bite. That's really where this comes from, taking a bite out of the capital. Also, let's see. I have a little cheat sheet here. No, I'm looking at the same as you are, only I have the Hebrew. Because there was something else that we passed over a little farther back, if you don't mind, if I could, on... I think it was 13, verse 13. So what you're not seeing here, for some of you, and I know that you don't, some don't read Hebrew, but when they talked about an area, and then nocturnal admission further, there should be an area outside the camp. The word they use in the Hebrew here is yad, and the word yad actually means hand, but in here they interpret it as area. For instance, the yad. What is it? The Yad Vashem?
Yeah.
Like is a memorial, okay? But it's the hand of God, but it's Yad Vashem is considered a memorial. Or we use a Yad pointer when we read from Torah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But in this interpretation, they're using the word as area, as the word area, that there's an area outside an area for you outside of the camp. I think because, I don't know, he's shunned, right? Is that the nocturnal emissions? which is the verse before, is he has to leave the camp because he's ritually polluting, considered to be polluting the area. The yard. Anyway, okay, I didn't mean to go back, but it's kind of interesting as we go along that maybe one week you might put a little bit of the Hebrew up and I can help interpret it because it's very different. Sometimes the words in Hebrew are very different than how it's interpreted
Yeah.
in English.
And when we were talking about the bite for the taxes,
Yeah.
I started thinking, of course, about, George Harrison was feeling the same way when he wrote Taxman. And the Beatles were paying 80% of their earnings to the Queen. Yeah. She's a millionaire.
There you go. Absolutely. It's interesting stuff. Interesting history, isn't it? It's something.
All right. When you make a vow to the eternal your God, do not put off fulfilling it. For the eternal your God will require it of you, and you will have incurred guilt, whereas you incur no guilt if you refrain from vowing. You must fulfill what has crossed your lips, and perform what you have voluntarily vowed to the eternal your God, having made the promise with your own mouth. When you enter a fellow Israelite's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you want until you are full, but you must not put any more in your vessel. When you enter a fellow Israelite's field of standing grain, you may pluck ears with your hand, but you must not put a sickle to your neighbor's grain. A householder takes a wife and becomes her husband. She fails to please him because he finds something obnoxious about her, and he writes her a bill of divorcement, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. Called the law firm of she leaves his household and becomes the wife of another man. Then this latter man rejects her, writes her a bill of divorcement, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. Or the man who married her last dies. Then the first husband who divorced her shall not take her to wife again, since she has been defiled, for that would be abhorrent to the Eternal. You must not bring sin upon the land that the Eternal your God is giving you as a heritage. When a householder has taken a bride, he shall not go out with the army or be assigned to it for any purpose. He shall be exempt 1 year for the sake of his household, to give happiness to the woman he has married. A hand mill or an upper millstone shall not be taken in pawn, for that would be taking someone's life in pawn. If a party is found to have kidnapped and then enslaved or sold a fellow Israelite, that kidnapper shall die. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst. In cases of a skin affliction, be careful to do exactly as the Levitical priests instruct you. Take care to do as I have commanded them. Remember what the Eternal your God did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. When you make a loan of any sort to your compatriot, you must not enter the house to seize the pledge. You must remain outside while the party to whom you have made the loan brings the pledge out to you. If the party is needy, you shall not go to sleep in that pledge. You must return the pledge at sundown, that its owner may sleep in the cloth and bless you, and it will be to your merit before the Eternal your God.
That's interesting stuff. I mean, of course, again, this is, it's all from the male perspective, right?
Yeah.
Which is tough for us sometimes to hear and to see. But, I mean, I also always like to point out, it's like the first time we really had a decent civilization when people were trying to get together on the promise that here's land, that we have a God, one God that we're trying to serve and try to get together and also try to love one another and love God at the same time and create a society around that. So it's a start, right? I mean, you got to start somewhere, and this was the start. And so, yeah.
Look at number 9, at verse 9.
Yeah.
Interesting. Remember what the Eternal your God did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. So, what book did that happen in? What was the incident?
Didn't she get leprosy because
No,
she and
no, no,
Aaron
no.
had criticized
No.
Zipporah?
Gary, not
That's what I
leprosy. Gary, not leprosy. Okay.
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 Okay,
so-
Dr. Mike, you have the floor. Go.
Okay, I have the floor.
That's all
Gary-
right.
What I did.
Sorry.
Gary gave me a particularly good introduction. Okay. If you're going to take a look in the Bible, her arms and part of her feet became white, and there were pieces of skin coming out, as she rubbed it, and it lasted for about 7 to 9 days. You know what that is?
Psoriasis?
Psoriasis. So the heartbreak of psoriasis lasts for between 7 and 9 days. And here's another thing about the psoriasis that makes that particular version more acceptable.
Mhm.
If you have psoriasis, if you get very upset, you bring on an exacerbation of the psoriasis within 2 hours.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things too. So now, Michael, you mentioned Leviticus. So something about that verse 9 is so significant because it's mentioned in Leviticus. It's then repeated in Numbers. And one thing that we know that when things keep popping up and are repeated and repeated and repeated throughout, that it takes on a different life of its own. It's very significant. I think what Gary mentioned was Lon Hara, which we call gossip today. Okay, that's what we say as gossip. So we don't know if this is truth or not. The other significant piece about that, when you think about where we are, we're in, where are we, Deuteronomy?
Deuteronomy, yeah.
That, so we know that we now have a timeline of sorts that Leviticus and Numbers happened much, much earlier than the Deuteronomy. So it kind of, you can kind of get the evolution of things as well.
Okay, actually, let's make sure that what you said is correct. Is before, but not much before. Okay, if you take the book of Genesis, the book of Genesis covers about 1,800 years. The other books, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, only 40 years.
Oh.
The 40 years that we were in the desert. So 1 year, one book out of the 5 covers 1,800 years. 4 books out of the 5 only cover 40 years. From the time that we left Egypt in the Exodus until Moses died and we went into the promised land.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Who hasn't read yet? I think I'll read. You shall not abuse a needy and destitute laborer, whether a fellow Israelite or a stranger in one of the communities of your land. You must pay out the wages due on the same day before the sun sets, for the worker is needy and urgently depends on it. Else a cry to the Eternal will be issued against you, and you will incur guilt. Parents shall not be put to death for children, nor children be put to death for parents. They shall each be put to death only for their own crime. I'm glad that's cleared up. Cynthia, I love it every time we do a death penalty. You shall not subvert the rights of the stranger or the fatherless. You shall not take a widow's garment in pawn. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and that the Eternal your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, do I enjoin you to observe this commandment. When you reap the harvest in your field and overlook a sheaf in the field, do not turn back to go get it. It shall go to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, in order that the Eternal your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat down the fruit of your olive trees, do not go over them again. That should go to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not pick it over again. Just pick it once. That shall go to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. Always remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, do I enjoin you to observe this commandment. So here's the fruits of this whole parsha, right? It's like, all right, here we go. We're going to really share with one another. We're not going to hoard anything. It's all going to be good. Where you have enough for yourself, now remember to leave some for others. I think it's beautiful.
That's good.
Cynthia, what do you think? I want to
I
hear
think
you.
good. Finally good.
Lauren, do you want to say something?
I do. Did you see me go time out?
Yeah, I see you timing out. Yes.
Time out. So
Yep.
what's interesting about this, especially this time of year, this is preparing us for during the time of Elul. It's preparing us for the High Holy Days, when we are commanded to leave our harvests, let them be, leave the four corners of the harvest for those who don't have enough food or don't have enough to keep any, to do for their family. You're supposed to leave the four corners. This is one of the reasons we, particularly this time of year, we do food drives. Okay, because this is where we're supposed to set everything aside. We have enough. Even if we feel we don't have enough, we have enough, because the Torah commands us that even the poorest of poor shall give. So, and it's right there that it says, don't go back. Take what you can, don't go back. You leave the rest for the sweeper, if you will.
That's great. Do you want to pick up at 25?
Sure. So when there is a dispute between parties and they go to law, and a decision is rendered declaring the one in the right and the other in the wrong, if the guilty one is to be flogged, the magistrate shall have the person lie down and shall supervise the giving of lashes by count as warranted by the defense. The guilty one may be given up to 40 lashes. That's where that comes from, but not more. Lest being flogged further to excess, you appear being degraded before your eyes. You shall not muzzle an ox while it is threshing. When brothers dwell together and one of them dies and leaves no offspring, the wife of the deceased shall not be married to a party outside of the family, her husband's brother, and declare, my husband's brother refuses to establish a name in Israel for his brother. He will not perform the duty of a levier. The elders of his town shall then summon him and talk to him. If he insists, saying, I do not want to marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull the sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and make this declaration. Thus shall be done to the family representative, will not build
He will not
his brother's house.
Yep.
And he shall go in Israel. He shall go in Israel by the name of the family of the unsandaled one. So I just watched a movie on Netflix. I wish I could remember the name of it. That this whole thing was put out. It was a very good movie. Anyway,
somehow this punishment doesn't seem like all the other ones. I mean, I'm sure it was probably worse, but it doesn't seem like the same as, I don't know, being shunned or being stoned or being beheaded. Like being called the unsandaled one. It's like, I'll take that one. That's a good punishment.
But imagine the embarrassment and the humility of
it must have been horrible. But...
of the brother not wanting to take his dead brother's bride. And imagine, not only is that horrible, but imagine being put in a position that you are supposed to do that you have an obligation to take your brother's wife.
It's true. Yes, absolutely. It's in that way, it also takes care of the woman who lost her husband, right? It's kind of a built-in safety net in a lot of ways.
She doesn't become the widow.
Right.
Now, what was the interesting thing about this movie, just to say that the husband that died, the brother that died, didn't have a great relationship with the brother who was living. One was Orthodox and one was barely religious. So the wife was Orthodox with the wig, who actually wanted to break out of that kind of lifestyle. And the brother, who was just intrigued a little bit about the wildness of the wife wanting to, she had lived in that cocoon, or I don't know, I call it a cocoon, that strict lifestyle for so long, that she kind of wanted the New York lifestyle, if you will, as a comparison. It was just an interesting give and take. And I can only imagine that it really happens.
Yeah.
Today. So, anyway,
Yeah.
I'll stop talking.
Why don't you keep going, Lauren? We're getting.
If two men, 11, is that?
Yeah, 11. Yeah.
If two men get into a fight with each other, and the wife of one comes up to save her husband from his antagonist and puts out her hand and seizes him by his genitals, you shall cut off her hand and show no pity. You shall not have in your pouch alternate weights, larger and smaller. You shall not have in your house alternate measures, a larger and a smaller. You must have completely honest weights and completely honest measures if you are to endure long on the soil that the eternal your God is giving you. For everyone who does those things, everyone who deals honestly is an abhorrent to the eternal your God.
Well, that's some kind of teaching there. I mean, of course, I'm assuming that the pouch in alternative weights, larger or smaller, or alternative measures, it's like, that you might have a sack of potatoes, but if you put extra weights in the sack, I'm giving you more potatoes, right? I mean, so sounds to me like that's what they're talking about, right? Gary? Anything else? We're getting to the very end. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt. How undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all these stragglers in your rear. Therefore, when the eternal your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that the eternal your God is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget.
Oof. What an ending. Wow. Do not forget.
Remember and do not forget.
Yes. Very good. Any other comments? What? I mean, did I tell you it was going to be a tough one this week?
Michael, would you give us a easy one next week?
So anything else? Cynthia, what'd you think? There was some good this week.
Well, that one about the wife trying to save the husband and so on, and the punishment is rather harsh, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, I think, like Gary said, I think it's like just, it is harsh. You're right. It's like Gary said, you put the tough things in there. So don't even think about doing it because, it's going to cost you maybe.
Yeah, it has to be harsh in order to be a deterrent,
Right.
It can't be soft and squishy because then it doesn't mean anything.
I know. And I mean, honestly, people like 1,000 years from now might look at our laws and go, look at how awful. Oh my gosh, these people, they're putting people in prison because they were trying to get their children in the best schools, the best colleges. These people are going to prison and they're just trying to help their stupid kids.
It happened in Boston.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The Hollywood stars that get caught and there's no compassion. There's no, I don't know. That's the one thing of like, everyone loves the idea. Like, yeah, let's put him in jail. Let's put him in jail. And then, if anyone has a child who's has a tough time learning and you got a couple million in the bank, what's $500,000 just to try to grease the skids and get them into school and wow, guys, I'm so glad we all came out tonight to enjoy the Torah and just to let it seep over us. Just let it. It's something. It's amazing, and I love the discussions that we have, and they make it so much fun for me, and I really appreciate it. And Alba was here pretty much all night, but you didn't see her much. But she chimed in, and I'm so glad.
Gary, thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you for being here. Come back.
Yeah, we loved your
Bring
idea.
your insight and your,
Everyone brings something. It's so good.
Yeah.
We can't do it without anyone.
I call my resources.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Woo! Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.